one of the unique things about the Battle of San Jacinto and a lot of the scholarship is that it's not always confined just to the academia, but also to amateurs who take a great interest in the battle. That's one of the legacies that we have found about, that we can appreciate today about San Jacinto, is that so many lay people have done a tremendous amount of research on various aspects of the battle, and he certainly has. He has a BS degree from Lamar University. He's married, has 3 children. He's a native of Houston. He's a life member of the San Jacinto chapter of the Sons of the Republic of Texas. His topic today is Sidney Sherman, who commanded the left wing at the Battle of San Jacinto, and who also happened to have been the great-great-grandfather of Gerard Kendall. Sidney Sherman was actually held in high esteem by Sam Houston in his official report of the battle, but one of the interesting, mysterious legacies of the battle is that there was a falling out between Sidney Sherman and Sam Houston, and that falling out extended well beyond their lifetimes. In fact, one Rice University professor, a very prominent, Andrew Forrest Muir, often remarked about this mysterious aspect of San Jacinto, and to some extent, when we talked this morning about a lot of the officers being angry with Sam Houston afterwards, Sidney Sherman certainly was part of that group afterwards. And Andrew Forrest Muir once remarked that in 1960, even as late as that time, Clarence Kendall, who was the great-nephew, great-uncle of our speaker, was the invited speaker for the San Jacinto Day address at the San Jacinto battlefield, and he managed to give a 1-hour oration on the battle without ever once mentioning or referring to Sam Houston's name, which is quite a feat in itself. But the bottom line is that the Kendall family has been a gift to San Jacinto. For many generations, they have devoted a tremendous amount of time and effort to improving the battlefield, and especially the museum. Gerard's father, Bill Kendall, passed away over a year ago, was a trustee of the museum for many years, and was largely responsible for the multimedia presentation, Texas Forever. This is a tremendous legacy for the museum. Gerard is really the latest of the Kendall line to promote San Jacinto, and he's an authority in his own right. In addition to his own research on Sidney Sherman, he's conducted many battle narratives in person on the battlefield, walkthroughs on the battlefield for the United States Army officers and soldiers who want to learn more about the tactics of San Jacinto. So where is Gerard? There he is. Come on up. Please join me in welcoming Gerard Kendall.
Who wants to stand? When I just stood, it felt good. If you'd like to stand, please. I need to do 1 or 2 things under here. And, well, I didn't sell that, did I, Jeff? And I don't, hey, great. Thanks, people. Feels good, doesn't it? Don't think I don't appreciate Jeff's comment on the pronunciation of San Jacinto. That'll certainly help me, Jeff. Thank you. It is my honor to talk on my great-great-grandfather. What I would like to mention is that he was a businessman in Kentucky, in the state of Kentucky, where he financed volunteers, bringing them to Texas for the San Jacinto campaign. I'm also going to talk about, let's call it different approaches in warfare that Sidney Sherman had from Sam Houston during that campaign. I'll go into just how very, very instrumental Sidney Sherman was in the outcome of the battle itself on April 21st. I'll touch on the defense of Sherman's reputation from accusations made by Sam Houston while he was in the United States Senate, and also Sherman's impact on the economic as well as the political development of Texas. Can we get those slides? Sidney Sherman was born July of 1805 in Marlborough, Massachusetts. He moved around into the state of New York, but then ended up in Newport, Kentucky. Newport is just immediately across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. He was involved in the manufacturing of cotton bagging by machinery. He was also developed sheet lead manufacturing, which was the first one to happen to occur west of the Alleghenies. Another thing that had happened was that he received a commission from Governor James Moorhead as a captain in the militia in Kentucky. He utilized some of his own funds to outfit 52 volunteers that he brought to Texas. It's my understanding that this is the only group of volunteers that came in to Texas to assist in the battle. They were uniformed, the only uniform group that was at the battle. He also procured rifles for them. Hence, they were labeled by some the Kentucky Rifles, and others call them the Newport Rifles. Now, right before their send-off, they had a ball was held in Newport, Kentucky, and a flag was presented by Mrs. Sidney Sherman and the ladies of Newport, Kentucky, to Captain Sherman. Matter of fact, we also are fortunate that a replica of that flag is right here. And this was some of the Texas Army who I think had to leave at lunchtime. This is one of their flags. So as you may have seen, may not, and I'm sorry for the clarity of the slide or the lack thereof, but it's a maiden holding a sword with a streamer over the sword bearing the words "liberty or death." Captain Sherman consigned this flag to one of his ensigns, James Sylvester. And Sylvester asked for a token from one of Sidney Sherman's daughters by which he could remember the occasion, the ball that night. Sidney Sherman's daughter replied, "Here, sir," drawing off one of her long white gloves and casting it at his feet. "Let this be your gauge of battle. Bear it foremost in the fight." Sylvester took the glove and he tied it to the staff head right above the flag, and he said, "I take it as a pledge of victory, and I will die before I surrender it to a foe." And lo and behold, the Texas Army even had this correct. One white glove. I guess what all movies or stories, they need the romance. So that's the extent of the romance that I have. And it's also reported that, yes, this was the only flag that flew by the Texas Army at San Jacinto, and that the glove itself was on the flag during the battle. However, has been lost, and that has never been found. It was December 31st of 1835 that they embarked, Sherman and the 52 volunteers embarked on a steamer from Newport, Kentucky, headed to Texas, and they arrived at Nacogdoches, Texas. This was in the latter part of January that they arrived, January of 1836, they arrived in Texas. At the end of February of 1836, they arrived at Washington on the Brazos. There was much confusion at that time prior to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, and Sherman felt a need not to stay at Washington on the Brazos and to vote in the convention, but rather felt the more important need was to go assist at the Alamo. Therefore, he asked for volunteers, additional volunteers, from right there in the town of Washington on the Brazos to march to the Alamo. In his march, he ended up in Gonzales. So this was about a 100-mile march from Washington to Gonzales. Upon his arrival there in Gonzales, which was still, maybe another 75 miles east of San Antonio and the Alamo, he was disappointed to find, roughly 200 individuals that could join him, and those individuals were poorly equipped to fight. So what he decided to do was just wait there and hopefully receive some more reinforcements, as opposed to taking roughly 250 men over to the Alamo at that point. So, and this delay occurred for 4, 5, 6 days. Then March 11th occurred, and General Sam Houston arrived at Gonzales. Sam Houston had a copy of the Declaration of Independence with him, but he only had his immediate staff. He did not have soldiers with him. However, for Sherman, this was definitely encouragement. It was stabilizing in general that the head of the Texas Army had arrived, and so he was quite relieved himself. The discomfort that had developed over the last few days prior to General Sam Houston's arrival. And it was also that day, the 11th of March, when they received in Gonzales, they received information that the Alamo had fallen back on March 6th. The very next day, March 12th, Sam Houston had organized the 1st Regiment of his army. Ed Bertelson was named colonel of that regiment, and Sidney Sherman was named lieutenant colonel of the 1st Regiment. But then the disappointing orders were given to retreat. The enemy had now become the pursuer. Sherman, as well as all the men, then experienced the full measure of disillusionment that comes to frustrated, ambitious soldiers who had no control over the situation. All they could do was obey the orders. It was approximately March 17th that they arrived in this retreat at Burnham's on the Colorado River. This is near the present town of LaGrange. This is the point where General Sesma arrived with approximately 700 troops and stopped on the west side of the Colorado River, approximately 2 miles north of where Houston's army was. Sidney Sherman was detached with about 350 men and sent north, keeping in mind that Sherman's men were on the east side of the river and Sesma on the other side. Sherman had asked General Houston for permission to cross the river and attack Sesma. That request was denied. The Texans again retreated. March 28th, they arrived at San Felipe, which is on the Brazos River, the Texan Army. Then they moved north to Grossi's plantation, still on the river. They stopped there for approximately a 2-week period and went through drills, training. Probably, evidently, this was the first training that had taken place with the whole army. Thomas Rusk arrived at this point, our Secretary of War. He instructed Houston to retreat no further. There was constant criticism and barrage against Houston and his retreat among the soldiers. Talk of a different commander came about. It was prevalent. Possibly Sherman was one that they were talking about for replacing Sam Houston. But Sherman said that he was there to follow the instructions of his commander. On April 8th, while still on the Brazos, General Houston reorganized his army, and additional to the 1st Regiment, where Colonel Burleson remained as colonel, he formed the 2nd Regiment with Sidney Sherman as colonel. They left the Brazos, and mid-April is when they got to the fork in the road that we've heard a lot about already. And then I want to take you to April 20th. I apologize that the slide's not real dark. There is a handout. I don't know if many of you got it. A 2-sided, printed on both sides. This on one side, and the slide that I have here is on the other side of this document, if you'd like to refer to that. So, April 20th, the Texans arrived to the field of battle first. They arrived in the morning of the 20th. They had come in from the Harrisburg-Lynchburg Road. They had been up here at Harrisburg and arrived to the field of battle along that road the morning of the 20th. They actually went over here to the ferry crossing when they first got there, but then decided to come back to this area and encamped in the grove of trees. Whoa, I'm turned around on that one. Okay, if I use this one. Now, their encampment was, as you see, Sherman's regiment, Burleson, Hockley, Millard, and Lamar over on the right wing with the cavalry. Santa Anna entered the field that same day, approximately 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and he came in from the New Washington Lynchburg Road. He had been down here at New Washington, and we've heard that's present-day Morgan's Point. Upon his arrival there, he stopped his troops who were in formation. They dropped their packs and formed a skirmish line and actually began delivering fire to the Texans back here in a grove of oak trees. This what I want to point out. This little group of trees here, when Sherman got here to the field of battle, this is where he stopped initially. When Santa Anna got to the battlefield, he stopped here and had the cannon known as the Golden Standard and was firing on the Texans. Sidney Sherman requested permission from General Houston to seek volunteers to capture the cannon. Permission was granted. Sherman soon procured 68 Cavaliers. Additionally, he was assured that infantry would be available as backup if necessary. The attempt to capture the field piece was unsuccessful. It became necessary to engage the backup infantry. But the commander-in-chief would not release them by saying, "What are they about? I ordered a reconnoiter only. Call off the infantry." Well, Sherman's later response to that was, "Not the first word ever passed between General Houston and myself respecting reconnoitering the enemy, and I did not know that such a thing was even thought of, either by General Houston or any other person, till I returned to the camp." April 21st, 1836. General Coss arrived that morning to the field with another 500 soldiers. This raised Santa Anna's troops to somewhere around 1,300. The Texans were slightly above 800. Apologize, I need to regress just a little bit. After the unsuccessful attempt to capture the cannon here on the 20th of April, the Mexicans came back into this area, retreated back in here. Wasn't a retreat, I'm sorry. They just pulled back here and set up camp in a grove of trees along this area. And then Sherman, with his 68 cavalry, returned back in here into the Texan camp. So that was the only activity is on the 20th of April. But here we are on the 21st. General Coss has come in, adding to the numbers in the Mexican camp. The 21st, it's noted that General Sam Houston slept in that morning. He hadn't had much sleep prior to that. He slept in, however, the men were up milling around. They knew that Santa Anna and his forces were just on the other side of the field. They were ready for things to happen. The question, then it became early afternoon. The question at that time, okay, do we fight now this afternoon, or do we wait till the morning? The information that I have on it was written by a Major William J.E. Hurd, and his written statement says, "Colonel Burleson galloped down to Colonel Sherman's regiment and soon returned and said, 'Boys, Sherman is determined to go into it this evening, and we must go it.' This decided the matter, according to Major Hurd. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. The army was formed for attack. They proceeded quietly across the field. Now, another important aspect is the battlefield layout itself, with the Texas Army back here and the Mexican Army down here. This is actually a ridge line, a raised ridge line, blocking the view from the Texan camp into the Mexican camp. The Mexicans did not know that the Texans were crossing the prairie. Matter of fact, the ridge line, the San Jacinto Monument sits right on top of this ridge line. The Mexicans had not posted any sentries. Therefore, the Texans did proceed undetected. This surprise was a very major factor in the Texas victory. Also, very major, the psychological states of mind of the Texans versus the Mexicans. The Texans were defending their homes, defending their families. The runaway scrape was in process. They had been in constant retreat ever since Gonzales. So we're talking close to a 2-month period now of retreating. Every Texan unit that had been confronted by Santa Anna was either killed or massacred up to this point. The Texans believed that they would either be victorious on that field of battle or they would not leave the field of battle at all. Now, on the other side of the coin, the Mexicans, their psychological state of mind, they were far away from home. It was a rainy, cold spring, Texas springtime. They were not eating the food that they were accustomed to eating. They lacked medical supplies. They were also ashamed. The soldiers were ashamed of what had happened. They were all aware of the Alamo. They had been at the Alamo, Santa Anna's troops. They were aware of the massacre at Goliad. They knew that it was a violation of all Mexican code of military honor. Now, there are written reports about the start or the first contact in the battle. These reports show that Sherman's 2nd Regiment, forming the left wing, proceeded slightly ahead of the rest of the Texan Army. He's also credited with commencing the famous battle cry, "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad." Colonel Pedro Delgado, in his report of the battle, states, "No important incident took place until 4:30 p.m. At this fatal moment, the bugler on our right," which is over in this area, signaled the advance of the enemy on that wing. General Sam Houston's battle report, written immediately after the battle, which might be different from a later written report, states, "Colonel Sherman, with his regiment, having commenced the action upon our left wing, rung the war cry, 'Remember the Alamo.'" That was General Sam Houston's report. And General Santa Anna writes, "One of their wings had driven away the 3 companies posted in the wood on our right, and from among the trees were doing much execution with their rifles." And one last report from, here again from Major William Hurd. Sidney Sherman marched his regiment to a point of woods where the Mexicans had taken position and attacked them. A sharp fire took place at that point. In a few moments, I looked in that direction and saw the Mexicans running along the edge of the woods and Sherman after them. This greatly encouraged me and others. We shouted at the top of our voices, "Yonder they go, boys," and Sherman after them. This happened when our regiment, the 1st Regiment under Burleson, was some distance from the enemy, and before we had fired a single shot. Sherman and his men pursued them in hot haste and crossed near where the breastworks joined the timber. This circumstance had more to do in gaining the victory than any other that took place that day. Now this is the previous slide, but zeroing in on the Mexican camp where all the fighting took place. The Mexicans were equipped with English muskets. They were trained in Napoleonic tactics. This was massed units firing volleys. A well-trained unit could deliver up to 3 volleys per minute. Now, a volley was devastating. Downrange, it had a scything effect. If the Mexicans had been able to form their units and deliver even 1 or 2 volleys, the results of the battle could have been different. So, gosh, I wish I could get over there. I think it's right here. The 2nd Regiment first made contact. They had advanced ahead of the rest of the Texan Army. First made contact here on the Mexican right wing, drove these 3 companies out of the woods, and these 3 companies came down here parallel to and behind the breastworks. The training that the Mexican soldiers had received to fire in mass volleys would have required the Mexican soldiers to come up. They were back here in the camp area. That would have required them to come up and man the breastworks with their muskets, and they were trained to fire upon command, throwing volleys out at the advancing Texas Army. They never did form up on the breastworks. Here again, because of this chaos created by these retreating 3 companies down here behind the breastworks. Another thing that happened was that some of the officers were being killed and lying here on the ground. And you know what happened, what it does to a soldier when they see their officer corps begin to being killed off. Now, out of formation, the Mexicans just were not trained to fight out of formation. The Texans definitely were. The Texans were individual fighters. This battle became a Texan kind of battle. The Texans took up the war cry, "Remember the Alamo, remember Goliad." The Mexicans, hearing that, responded, "Me no Alamo, me no Goliad." Hey, I wasn't there. Don't take it out on me. But sorry, we had put it up too long, and the outrage began to vent itself, and the results. The battle lasted approximately 18 minutes along the breastworks themselves. The retreat of the Mexicans back into this area lasted an hour or more. The count was approximately 630 Mexican fatalities and about 9 Texan fatalities. The result, the Republic of Texas. Santa Anna was captured the very next day. He signed, reluctantly, a treaty whereby he agreed to evacuate all of the remaining Mexican forces out of Texas. So, to show how instrumental Sherman was with his 2nd Regiment, being the attacking force, first to make contact, to create the chaos, not allowing the Mexicans to utilize their muskets for this mass volley. The rest of the troops, Millard, Burleson, they were all able to come through. They broke through the breastworks. We used the twin sisters, the 2 cannon that we had. We fired grape shot into the breastworks and blew away some of that. And so it was just nothing but Texas victory after that point. Later on, Sidney Sherman submitted his resignation from the Army, and this was in August of that year. David Burnett, president, denied his request. Rather, he appointed Sherman colonel of the regular army, and he was sent to Kentucky to recruit for the Texas Army. At this time, Sherman was given the following note, written by the War Department, Velasco, Texas, August 6, 1836. This stand of colors presented by the ladies of Newport, Kentucky, to Captain Sidney Sherman is the same which triumphantly waved on the memorable battlefield of San Jacinto, and is by this government presented to the lady of Colonel Sidney Sherman as a testimonial to his gallant conduct on that occasion. Signed, Alexander Somerville, Secretary of War, and approved by David G. Burnett, President of the Republic of Texas. In August of 1896, this flag, along with the original note from Somerville and Burnett, was given by the daughters of General Sidney Sherman to the state of Texas. And it now hangs behind the Speaker's desk in the House of Representatives in Austin, Texas. Shifting gears a little bit, back to General Sam Houston. Many years had passed since the San Jacinto campaign. This was February of 1859. Sam Houston, in the United States Senate, gave a farewell speech as senator from Texas. It consisted of accusations of cowardice towards Sidney Sherman's actions during the Battle of San Jacinto. Why such a speech? Did it have to do with Sherman's request to attack General Sesma on the Colorado River, which Houston denied? Was it the retreat of the Texan Army from the Colorado at a point when the Texan troops were of its greatest numbers? There, where the soldiers were calling for a new commander, Sherman's name being mentioned repeatedly? Was it the skirmish of 1820? Was it the skirmish of April 20th, when Sherman led the 68 Volunteer Cavalry? Another incident was October of 1836. Sam Houston severed Sherman's connection with the Army without even letting him know it, recalling that Sherman had been sent by Burnett to Kentucky to recruit volunteers. While he was there, Houston had then been elected president, and he severed this tie without even informing Sherman. Additionally, he denied reimbursing expenses that Sherman had incurred while he was in Kentucky recruiting these volunteers. So, Sherman's rebuttal to this was presented in June of that year, so about 4 months later, in the form of a pamphlet that he compiled consisting of many letters that he had obtained from individuals that were familiar, that were there at San Jacinto. It begins where Sherman was addressing the people of Texas. Sherman wrote, "How the United States Senate could so far forget what was due to its own dignity as to listen to such an irrelevant speech as General Houston's, calumniating private citizens in connection with events occurring out of its own territory and jurisdiction, not belonging to its history, the United States history, and where no defense could be heard from the victims of this malevolence, I do not understand." Some of the authors of the letters that made up this pamphlet were written by Captain Jesse Billingsley, M.A. Bryan, relative of Stephen F. Austin, Major William J.E. Hurd, Mirabeau B. Lamar, David G. Burnett, and Anson Jones. Yes, there were words written by many influential people of Texas, but there were also many actions, both prior to and after Houston's speech, proving that Sherman was an honorable man. Only 18 months after that incident, the Texan Committee of Public Safety unanimously elected Sidney Sherman as commander of the forces at Galveston. This was at the beginning of the war between the states. Other distinguishing events were that Sherman was elected Major General of the Texas Militia in 1839. In 1842, he was elected to the House of Representatives of the Republic of Texas. In 1847, Sherman had George Steele make a survey of Galveston Bay and the Buffalo Bayou to test its navigability as far up as Harrisburg, Harrisburg still being the major city in South Texas. And today we have the Houston Ship Channel. Another event was that Sherman and DeWitt Clinton Harris built the first sawmill in the area. This bridge was, a lot of people refer to it as the Loop 610 Bridge over the Houston Ship Channel, which is on the east side of town. In 1974, this bridge was officially named by the City Council of Houston the Sidney Sherman Bridge. Sherman's largest contribution to the economic development of Texas was the building of the Buffalo Bayou, Brazos, and Colorado Railroad. This was the very first railroad in Texas. He arranged its financing, the chartering of it, as well as the construction. It started at Harrisburg, went through Richmond, and ended in Alleyton on the Colorado River. Then the Civil War broke out, which prevented any further construction further west. And this happened to be the parent stem of the Southern Pacific Railroad, whose tracks to this day are located on the original roadbed. There was a town named after Sherman, a county named after him. And it was August of 1873 when Sherman died. He died in Galveston. In 1894, the Sidney Sherman chapter of the Daughters of the Republic of Texas exhumed both Sherman's body and David G. Burnett's body and moved them to the Lakeview Cemetery in Galveston, and they've erected this obelisk in their honor. By the way, the Daughters of the Republic still maintain this, keep it in order. In 1936, a monument was dedicated to Sherman. This stands on Broadway Boulevard at about 6th or 7th Street in Galveston. Not only state but federal funds were contributed for this monument. So, I think that we have many acts of recognition and honor that have been bestowed upon this adventurer, promoter, pioneer, soldier, statesman, and patriot, General Sidney Sherman. Thank you.
Just want to say that the sequence of the battle that you saw was really one of the best that I've ever seen presented publicly. It went through the details very well. And Gerard, we thank you very much for doing that. For the next 30 minutes, we're going to watch two movies. One of the more difficult things about that we've learned today is that there's no real agreement on a lot of issues pertaining to the Battle of San Jacinto. But hopefully we've at least learned a few things that have resolved some of the issues. Hollywood, when they first started coming out with movies, was initially attracted to the Alamo because the Alamo had a great amount of drama. And some of these Alamo movies had sequences on the Battle of San Jacinto at the end. And the first movie we're going to see is just the last segment, the San Jacinto segment of Martyrs of the Alamo. This movie was produced in 1915. There was actually an earlier movie that depicted the battle, but the movie's been lost. But this movie had been around for many years and was lost and rediscovered in 1977 and put into video format. It's a silent movie, but it has a soundtrack that was added when the movie was put into this format. So we'll hear this the sound coming through. The movie was directed by Christy Cabane under the supervision of D.W. Griffith, who made the Birth of the Nation movie. We're going to see the last 15 minutes of the film. It's a very entertaining film, but it's not particularly historically accurate. We're going to start at the end of part 4. We will see the frightened face of the widow, Susanna Dickinson, at the Alamo. We will see her being released by Santa Anna, showing her reaching the Texas Army, and we will see Sam Houston, and they have a figure in the movie known as Silent Smith, who is similar to Deaf Smith, but clearly is a different kind of a person. But I think he's one of the more entertaining characters in the film. You'll see a Mexican camp scene, which is totally fictitious, where Silent Smith sneaks in and manages to spy directly outside Santa Anna's tent on what Santa Anna's plans are. And in the meantime, he rescues his girlfriend, who happens to be captured by Santa Anna. You'll see the Texas Army retreat. In the beginning of part 5, the scene moves directly to San Jacinto. You'll see the dramatic attack, which I think of all the San Jacinto movies, I have to say this is really one of the more dramatic filming events of the battle. You'll see Santa Anna in his tent being entertained by 5 women. There's the attack. Santa Anna is discovered in the bushes, And the final scene is the dramatic signing of the treaty where he gives up Texas, which is a very highly dramatic moment. So let's now see the last 15 minutes of Martyrs of the Alamo.